time that we are talking, we do achieve quorum. I have somebody, a staff member, who is actually tracking it. We can actually skip roll as well. She'll let me know if we do achieve quorum, and then we can't make a decision. So, but we'll just kind of get some feedback today based on what we've put together, based on the last discussion that we had about this. And like I said, we'll try to reschedule pretty quick here so that we can get a decision made. So, like I said, we did put together a solicitation that just does outline the discussion that we had last time about the funding priorities that need to be, that you all think is appropriate, and then we need to finalize the grant award modification, and so that's part of what we're trying to do. And so any feedback on what we put together would be incredibly helpful so that we can get there. So this was asked last time. So the project period is September 1st, 2024 to August 30th, 2026. And what that means is that is the period in which this money this first round of funds would need to be spent. And so with available funding being about 2.8 million to potential applicants for this first round. And again, we do have to honor that 40% required pass through to local governments. With that, there was some discussion last time regarding eligibility and kind of this desire to be able to get to as many different types of organizations as possible that would be able to apply for these funds. And so part of the solicitation that we put together is this definition of eligible applicants. And so this is something that we use for a restorative justice grant. And the reason why we thought it would be pretty helpful with this grant as well is it addresses CBOs, it addresses local governments, and it also addresses government entities at the state level as well. And so we thought this was a good way to address those concerns about making sure that the grant solicitation was open to all different kinds of groups. So any feedback on this?
This is basically everyone, right?
Correct. That's what we tried.
Okay.
Yeah, we tried to make it as broad as possible, just based on the conversation that we had last time, and just making sure that I think the concern was that groups would be missed, right? They wouldn't be eligible, and so we tried to make this as inclusive as possible, for sure.
And just to clarify, it looks like there is no requirement that organizations be a 501c3 if they're, do they have to have 501c3 status if they're like a community-based organization?
That's a great question.
I'm not seeing that here. I'm not suggesting that we should necessarily, because I think we should keep it really broad, but sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm just trying to think. So for our grant making purposes for this grant, CJC doesn't have that requirement for this grant program. What I would have to double check is to make sure that there wasn't a requirement from BJA, that was the case. We aren't going to be making rules for this grant, and normally we would have definitions like that we would provide. And so I just want to make sure before I answer that with any sort of authority, that BJA doesn't have any sort of requirement on that. But as this is for eligibility for people who can actually apply, or for groups that can actually apply, that's not the case. So in terms of receiving funding, that is something that I can look into, but eligibility, that's not a requirement. Okay, any other feedback or comments or thoughts on eligibility.
Rachel, I just wanted to add, we are at quorum now.
Oh, we are. Okay. Kimberly, do you still have to leave at 2:30?
I do, and my apologies. I need to be at a legislative hearing. I'll return if everything finishes up before 3, but I can't guarantee it.
Okay, I'm actually going to skip then. I'm going to skip this. Well, here's the thing. Is there a consensus on this for eligibility? Is there a consensus that this actually works for eligibility for applicants? Getting a yes, I'm getting thumbs up. Okay, perfect. Okay. This next slide is also what we need a consensus on. And so we sent a poll to y'all with a list of things that you all had seen, we've been talking about, and asked that you all prioritize them in terms of what the focus should be for this grant program and where this first round of allocated funds should go. And so in this part of the solicitation, we had, we kind of ranked these in order of how they were prioritized by you all. And so the develop or operate community violence intervention programs came in with the highest amount of votes in terms of prioritizing funds. Facilitate safe storage, tracking, and the return of relinquished firearms came in next in terms of prioritization. And then there was a tie between providing training for law enforcement related to identifying suicide and substance misuse, and then conduct trainings for public information campaigns to promote ERPOs. And so this is the kind of order that these were prioritized according to the poll that was sent out to y'all. And so the question that I have for all of you in terms of this discussion, there's a couple of things. BJA would appreciate a more direct and more narrow focus when we turn in our modified program narrative. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these can't be prioritized for you all. And so is there something that out of this list, do you want one or two of them? Do you want all four of them? Kind of just a discussion for you all, but this was the results of how you all prioritized these potential places that these funds could go. Jess.
Yeah, thanks. A couple of things that I think are important to note are, one, the DOJ is about to have their second round of $10 million of funding for CVI organizations. And I do think it's really important context that, you know, this funding, and really thinking about, there is not funding available around suicide prevention work that is connected to the bottom three of these things. And so just being aware that, you know, that's only for the year ahead. Second, what's not available in that funding is anything around evaluation of those programs. And so if we were going to prioritize CVI, I would really like to see something around research and evaluation as part of it. And I have spent a lot of my time advocating for CVI funding, and next year it might be different if that DOJ funding is not available, but I think it's important context for this year. And then the second thing I would say is I think there hasn't been quite enough understanding of extreme risk protection orders to understand that lines 2, the second and third options, could also be connected to extreme risk protection orders that don't necessarily have to be separate things. Meaning, I would like us, for example, to train law enforcement, which is a big need, around extreme risk protection orders and support them in facilitating storage of firearms, that those things actually go together. So just a little bit more context on all of the above.
Okay, I saw a lot of thumbs up. I need some sort of, what do those thumbs up mean in terms of prioritizing or putting the focus on a few of these things, one of these things, none of them? I just need some sort of consensus, Shannon.
I did not raise my thumb.
Oh,
I just want to
okay.
make sure I clarify,
That's
but
fine.
because I think it sounds we're going to get into a further conversation. DOJ received 10 million. Last time we received 15. So there are already programs in the CDI area that are not going to be funded. And so the voice I would like to put out there is it's still, I think, very important to make that one of the priorities of the funding. Supportive of everything else that was said, but I just want to say that it sounds like a lot of money unless it's spread out over 50 plus organizations. And then the fact that it's gone down and we don't have any guarantees about it continuing. And we're trying to build infrastructure. That's why there isn't research and evaluation, because many of these programs are newer. So I think it's very important to sustaining this and building this response that we continue to fund that. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any, let's see, Jeff.
Thanks. My question is, there's 4, the last 2 were tied for third, I guess. How close was the vote? I mean, was there an overwhelming favorite? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, the overwhelming favorite was the CVI. Yeah, that one got the most. And then by quite a margin. And then the safe storage and the last 2 were like a vote or 2 apart in terms of like majority. And so those 3 came in pretty close to each other. But yeah, the majority of overwhelmingly, the first one got the majority of the votes. So I also just want to pause. Lori, I see that you are here. Are you, okay. So
Yeah, I have something to say.
Okay, just real fast, just real fast. I just want to make sure that we have quorum, even if Kimberly leaves, just so that we can continue to have this conversation. Okay,
so me being from the African American community, I see the last one I agree on, and then the first one, but I don't see. I work with mothers that are affected with violence. I guess I can work around the first one far as developing something or even applying for the grant. But I do not see anything that's developed into, and somebody said something about research. We need to do surveys. We need to put surveys when you do the program or whoever wins these grants, you need to survey the people that you have as clients. That's very important to get data.
okay, thank you for that. Any other thoughts or comments on, I've heard a few things. I've heard prioritizing the last 3. I've heard prioritizing all 4. Just a reminder that the more direct and the more narrow the focus is, probably the better in terms of BJA approving this. And Jen, go ahead. I think Jen had her hand up. Maybe not. Oh, Jess has her hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry to talk again. I just do strongly think you could combine those last 2, conduct training or public information campaigns that could go towards the public or law enforcement. And then with number 1, just second what Lori said around, adding, it could also be research. So it doesn't have to be one or the other, but just adding in or evaluation, as well as maybe trauma support or survivor support in that light as well. I'm strongly for CBI funding. I just wanted to make sure people were aware that there is some funding available versus there is 0 available around ERPOs and some of the secure storage and suicide prevention work, which are 80% of our gun deaths.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? I don't think we have quorum as of right now, and so I don't think we're going to be able to make a decision today. What I'm hearing is to maybe combine the bottom 2 and keep the other 2 intact as they are. Is that kind of what I'm hearing as a suggestion? potentially when we come back.
And the second one there is, I remember it coming up in the context of ERPO also. And then I remember Representative Peterson asking if we knew about levels of secure storage across the state, especially in context of our child access prevention law. So those were kind of the two components of that I remember. But I wonder if that isn't like primarily an ERPO related concept too.
Okay. So can I then ask maybe that we, because we're not going to get quorum, I don't think today. I think everybody is okay with the way that the first bullet point is worded. I think everybody's comfortable with that. Can we then wordsmith something with the last three so that we can put something together that you all are comfortable with that we can then vote on next time we have quorum? Because essentially what I don't want to have happen is that we break from this meeting, CJC staff tries to put language together, and then we end up kind of having the same discussion next time. And so if as a group, it sounds like there are some things with the last three that can be combined into kind of one focus point. Is this something that we can, as a group, we can wordsmith with the time that we have, and then next time we can come back and get a consensus and vote on it? Does that sound okay? Okay. All right. Who wants to start?
Sorry, I keep hammering on this. On the first one, is it possible, would folks agree to add, develop, operate, or research or evaluate one or the other there? Just add one more word there. And then on the second part, I will say that, you know, from research, some of the biggest needs the state has in this area are around hiring regional coordinators, creating better public facing materials, including in Spanish, training law enforcement, better tracking and support in court disposition, and then again in research. So I wonder if it could be something using the bottom bullet, like conduct training or public information campaigns, including public facing websites or, you know, positions, because some of the funding has to go towards city or county. And not limited to, but including training for law enforcement or support for increased secure storage, etc. Like something that just pulls it together.
Okay.
Are you all able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Thank you. I had to leave and then come back. And this is Jen. I just wanted to, this is going to be backtracking a little bit, so I apologize.
It's okay.
As far with the, about the safe storage comment that was made earlier, I just wanted to mention one effort that's being done through the Association of Oregon Community Mental Health Programs, who's partnered with Oregon Health Authority to give free firearm safe storage lock boxes to community mental health programs across the state. And there's been just a huge need for that from the CMHPs across the state, and has shown to be just a really, really good support. So I feel like for that one in and of itself, I agree with others when they said that it's can definitely be connected to ERPOs, and also that the need from the community and from just Oregonians across the state has shown that that's a really it's just a big need area. So I think that too, when Jess spoke a while back about just the suicide prevention efforts and wanting to get support for those, that I just wanted to say I agreed. My chat wasn't working, so I just wanted to so sorry for backtracking, but just to kind of add some of that information for folks.
No, you're totally fine, Jen. Thank you. Okay. So I'm hearing that the safe storage and ERPOs are related, or they could be, correct? Is that right? Along with law enforcement training for identifying suicide and substance use and all of that. Is that so? All of these things can be combined in kind of one focus area. Is that what I'm hearing? That it would basically we could have 2 bullet points
Yeah.
instead of 4? Is that
I think that would make sense to have 2 instead of the 4. And we could have like, we would know as a group, like the different subsections for the second bullet. But as far as kind of like narrowing it, like what you were saying for others, I think that seems to make sense.
okay? Is this I'm gonna ask if somebody could maybe throw out a sentence with those 3 things combined in just a second. But I also just want to make sure that if we do combine these, that it's going to make sense for an applicant in terms of what they're going to be able to ask funds for. Just so we also have to balance that, right? And so we got to be direct in terms of what our focus is going to be, but we also have to have some clarity with the applicant in terms of what they can actually ask for and what the purpose of these funds are for. And so those things need to kind of be considered.
I'm happy to throw something out there, but I know I've been talking a lot, so I will wait until others have a chance.
Could it just be something kind of like, as this is definitely not eloquent, but just something even as like for suicide prevention efforts such as, and then like list different things as options? I'm sure Jess probably has a much better way of saying that, but just kind of thinking through just having it be kind of like straightforward. And so that's one idea. But Jess, what was your thought?
Yeah, Jen, I like that. Perhaps something like increase usage, awareness, and effectiveness of secure storage and/or ERPOs to reduce firearm suicide through public information campaigns, law enforcement, or other public training, direct staffing to support increased usage and/or the purchase to facilitate storage. I don't know. I don't have the final line, but something along those lines. I can
Okay.
email that to you, Rachel, if that's helpful.
That's perfect. And we also have this recorded, so I'm definitely not I can't write all that down. So if you want to email it, that's fantastic. But we can also go back. Dr. Carlson, did you have something to add to that?
No, I see Laura's hand.
Oh, okay.
Here, I'll go
Laura.
back and mute.
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to say I support that general idea. I also wanted to add my voice in support to adding evaluate to the first bullet. So develop, evaluate, or operate. I agree, evaluation is super important for us to understand what works in Oregon.
Perfect. Thank you. If we go back to Jen's idea of starting with preventing suicide and then through the facilitation of safe storage, right? And we started kind of with that phrase and then added what Jess said. Would that make more sense in terms of purpose? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Because I think
quite grasp that, sorry.
So Jen, can you say what you said before? Because I think it made sense in kind of tying it all together under sort of a pretty direct focus.
Yeah, I can. So
doesn't have to be eloquent.
You say something and then it like shoots out of your brain. But I think I said something like to increase suicide prevention efforts, with like safe storage, ERPO trainings, and then kind of like listing out the other ones as they are on here, but just really to kind of start the sentence with for suicide prevention efforts such as blah, 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 blah.
Okay. So does that approach tie that together in a way that makes sense for you all? I think that's kind of the first beginning of a sentence, at least where I can see kind of what the purpose of it is, what an applicant could see the purpose of it was, that focus, what BJA could see it was, and then through safe storage, training for law enforcement, conducting, public information campaigns for ERPOs, and that kind of stuff could then be listed. Is that an approach that makes sense to you all in combining those things? And to Jess's point about asking for specific things, so asking for personnel and things like that, those are things that they're going to be able to ask for in their budget. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be laid out specifically in this section. Does that make sense, Jess? And so they can tie that kind of request in another space.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks. I was thinking of it we really could use some regional coordinators. And so it kind of like almost highlighting that as a emphasis.
Yep. Yeah. Does anybody have any thoughts about that approach and anchoring it in preventing suicide or gun violence?
I was stumbling over that. I mean, suicide being like the most prevalent and a major focus, but secure storage prevents, unintentional shootings too. And like we talked about before with the children's injury and such. And then ERPO also used preventatively for mass shootings and other homicides. So I think wordsmithing wise, highlighting suicide is important, but the ideas go beyond suicide too.
Okay, so would it make sense then to anchor it in something more broad?
Well, it could be like suicide and other.
Like, what about like just suicide and like firearm injury prevention, or just something like suicide prevention and yeah. So like naming both things.
Yeah, so there's some wiggle room in there.
Okay. So if another kind of option that we potentially could have is that bullet point number 2 could potentially remain as is. And then you just would combine the conduct training to that. And then kind of to Jess's point, then add deliverables that you could kind of point out with bullet point number 2. Potentially that could also be an option in combining these. So a third bullet could then be those deliverables. Did that make sense? Take number 2, take the bullet point number 2 as is, add the conduct trainings to it. And so it kind of is its own as is, and then any sort of deliverables for bullet point number 3. Ryan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to make you struggle to translate my input.
Thank you.
No problem. Hi, folks. For the record, Ryan Keck with CJC. If I'm hearing the conversation, I'm just wondering if there's a differentiation between any kind of grant-funded activity that is designed around facilitating safe storage, tracking, etc., and a grant-funded activity that is focused on conducting training, public awareness, etc. So that my idea was not to smush them further, but hearing this conversation, maybe there's bullet number 1, we've already talked through that. There's bullet number 2, and you were to leave that as is, and then you find the words that capture what I'm hearing, the emphasis around suicide prevention and maybe a few other things in some kind of training statement, which is kind of what those third and fourth ones both speak to, but with different endpoints versus combining it all into one type of collection of endpoints. I don't know if that's any better, but that's what I was thinking.
Thank you, Ryan.
Rachel, we are at quorum now.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I have one more try at that combined thing. How about increase awareness, usage, and effectiveness of ERPOs and secure storage through bullet point, like colons, trainings, public information campaigns, regional coordination, or other activities for the public and or law enforcement. Kind of what you just said, Ryan, combined. It doesn't have the suicide prevention part, Jen, and injury prevention or mass shooting prevention, so we might want to add that.
Jen?
Yeah, two comments. One, if I think that if we could have suicide prevention somewhere in there, I think that that could be helpful just to kind of show that crossover and that important link between the two. I think that that could be good, and also not wanting to ignore the other types of injury that we're also trying to prevent. So like not wanting to bogart everything, but also if there's just, I don't know, in the application, if there just be another way to kind of call those things out. And then the second part also goes back a little bit. We've talked about evaluation a couple of times. I'm wondering, do you think that that could just also be like a requirement overall for folks, like if they pick any one of these 4 things? Because I feel like all of these different things, it would be important and good to be able to see where they're happening. Like, for example, the training for law enforcement, like who's being trained and what parts of the states, and like the different levels of, I'm sorry, I don't know the name, but yeah, just levels of like the law enforcement from like the deputies to the other parts. But yeah, that could just like kind of be an overall requirement for it, unless you all would like to specifically call it out for the first bullet point. I just think it could be cool to see data for all the different things.
So thank you for that, Jen. One of the slides that I have that we were going to get through is hopefully is application requirements. And so what these actually are, what they have to be able to respond to. And part of that, this is one of the slides. And so this would be something that they would have to address. This would make sure beyond the eligibility point, this would also be something that grantees would be analyzed by. But the section I think that you're talking about, Jen, is maybe this one, where some of these are going to be in the implementation stage. Some of them will be planning, some of them will be existing. And so we will ask these questions specifically on how they're tracking, and then what the actual goals and outcomes for their programs are. So I think that captures it a little bit outside of what we've been talking about so far. So Jess.
Really quick, there is though a distinction of, for example, if OSU or the U of O or OHSU wanted to help, we've heard from a lot of CBI orgs that they would really benefit from support where they could partner to do evaluation as a broader group. So that's why I'm kind of hampering on that.
Okay. Okay, so we currently have quorum. And so we have about 10 minutes left. And I want to go back to this. We did get kind of consensus on the eligibility requirements, who needs to be eligible, but I do want to go back to this. Jess did
Rachel,
provide, sorry, Shelby, did you?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we just had a member leave.
Okay, so we don't have quorum. Okay. This is just how it goes sometimes. Okay, so let's do this. Jess, I think the sentence that you used was probably the most coherent in terms of what everybody was trying to say throughout this discussion. I don't know if you had that written down. If not, don't worry about it, because we can go back and get this off the recording and get that statement. And so we can put that together, and I think as is with the addition of the evaluation, develop or operate or evaluate community violence, I think that word will be added into the first one. Otherwise, it will be left as is, and then we will use some of your all's feedback in terms of language to combine those three and provide something for you all to react to so that we can get a vote. That's as far as we can go today because we do need quorum. One of the things that is challenging with quorum is this is a big group. It's a big advisory group. There's a lot of people in it. And so we need 10 people. And that is a lot of people to get into kind of one room. And so that's where this challenge has come, particularly with this group, just because it's a high number. And so I guess what I can ask at this point is, what can we do? We are kind of coming up against a pretty hard timeline in terms of getting this to BJA. We do need to at some point be able to apply for the 2024 SCIP funding, and this needs to move forward before we can do that. Okay, so internally, CJC staff has some deadlines that we need to meet, and that means that this needs to be moving forward. So with that being said, we have done the doodle polls. Typically, we get people. We get what we think is going to be enough people. I do know that legislative days were today, and so any suggestions on how we can get this group together as quickly as possible. Jen.
This might be not a great idea, but it seemed like we had quorum like a few different times during the meeting today. So like, what if we were to have a time that like works for folks best, like through a doodle poll, and then we kind of were like, didn't necessarily have specific things to go over, but like once we had quorum and everybody was in the room, then we can kind of like vote. So we all have like an hour set aside. We're just like kind of chilling in the space, and then once we have like that magic number pop up, we can just kind of like quickly vote. I know that's probably not like ideal, but it seems like we kind of go through waves of having quorum in like a single span of an hour. So that's just one idea that popped up.
That's a great idea. The other thing we can do is, because this is the only decision that needs to be made, we can make this meeting very short. There are times where we just, when we have to do business is what it's called, we need a vote. It can be a 30-minute meeting because this would be it. We would just review this and then get a vote. And so it can be a short meeting where, we don't necessarily have to set aside a big chunk of time, but we could identify, of that hour, 30 minutes, we're going to have quorum. We can do business at that point. Is this feasible for us to try to get something scheduled for next week?
Lori also said, sorry, she texted me that she might be able to hop back on if we could wait like a minute.
Okay. If she, right. Shelby, do we have 9 right now? Is that how many we have? Sorry, talking to staff here, checking.
Yes, we have 9.
Okay, so if Lori can hop back on. Go ahead.
We'll need a minimum of 10 days before we can set a public meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. This is why Shelby's here.
Hey, Rachel, I've got a quick question. For those of us from agency land, is it possible that if we can't make it, that people provide an alternative? Like if I couldn't have made it today, I would have had our deputy come. And so is that possible?
That's a good question. Ryan, is that possible in terms of voting? I don't actually know that answer. I know that you can send somebody in your place for meetings, like to get information and such, but I don't know if like from a voting standpoint, if somebody can vote in your place. I don't know how that works.
I don't not typically know, at least not how we tend to operate. We could probably explore it, but I'd want to check those BGA requirements too, because this does have to have an affirmative decision by this body that's been seated as part of our BJA submission. So I don't know how strict they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just, it might be worth checking on, because I'm not here as Shannon Savell community member. I'm here as Shannon Savell, Oregon Department of Justice. So I would think that as long as I appropriately, or one of our counterparts appropriately briefed the individuals that were there, it's just an idea. Like I definitely, I think I could probably be here next time, but for folks that can't be, if there's somebody in their agency that can step in, that might be what's needed to move on. It's just an idea.
Okay. I think there's 5 minutes left. I think at this point, we don't have the appropriate language put together to make any sort of decision beyond kind of that first bullet point. And so we will send, is everybody okay with us sending out a doodle poll tomorrow? We will try 30 minutes. We'll try 30 minutes, a couple of options with 30 minutes, 10 days from now. Like we'll start with that and kind of go and see where we land. Is everybody comfortable with that? Because I don't think at this point we're gonna get a vote. Okay, perfect. Okay, we'll do that then. Thank you, Jess. Thank you for Jen, Dr. Carlson, all of you that, you know, put some words out there and allowed us to kind of wordsmith this. We will put something together and some language together for that second bullet point. And then we will in that meeting just present this. Okay. And so that's really the only order of business that we're going to need from you all. So it should be a very short meeting, about 30 minutes long. Okay. Yeah.
Lori, did that work? Is that Lori back on?
I think at this point, Jess, that
Yes.
we don't have
The language. Okay.
the
I did send you the draft language in an email if it's helpful, but just being cognizant of time and how challenging this has been to get folks here.
I mean, I can read it if you all have a second. It says increase awareness, usage, and effectiveness of ERPOs and secure storage to support suicide prevention and firearm injury reduction through trainings, public information campaigns, and/or regional coordination for the public and/or law enforcement. Do you want me to share? See if I can share this so you can see the language. Is that helpful? Let me actually just do this.
And so that would be the second bullet point. And then the first
Correct.
one is to develop, evaluate, operate. That second one, Jess, is there an evaluation component in that too?
I put increase effectiveness as well. So I think that would count as evaluation as well.
Can
Or
you see this?
Increase or evaluate effectiveness?
Yeah. I don't know if can you all see, I just dropped it in an email instead of waiting for a Word to open. So if you can't read it. Is this something that you all are comfortable with? I'm seeing a thumbs up from Roy. Okay.
So we could thumbs up this. We could actually vote on these two right
We
now.
can, if you all are comfortable with this language, we do have quorum. If this is language that you all are comfortable with using as that second bullet point, I just need sort of a consensus. And so I need some people to unmute. We do have thumbs up. Just say, yes, this is good. So it's on record. Jess. Oh, okay. Your thumbs up. Okay. Okay. Any issues, I can't think of the word. Anybody not think this is good? What am I? Objections. Thank you. That's the word I'm trying to think. Any objections to this language?
Should we just add evaluation to after the colon? Trainings, public information campaign, regional coordination and/or evaluation, or so, I don't know if you're trying to avoid a catch-all in there for anyone else that comes with an innovative idea that isn't captured by one of these phrases, but.
So right there, is that what you're talking about? Somewhere in there, something like that. Okay. Okay. I think we're going to go with this. Okay. Thank you all so much for this. I know this was kind of a very different kind of meeting. I appreciate y'all sticking around. Quorum is difficult. So I do, just before we do leave, I do have to just open this up for public comment and then I can close the meeting. So if there's anybody that's in the public that's not a board member that would like to comment, this is the time to do so. I don't think there's anybody. Okay. Next steps, we are gonna modify the program narrative based on these two things. This focus, we're gonna submit that to BJA. And then we will let you know in terms of when there's a need for you all to meet again. There will be a point where you will be evaluating applications, but we will give you an update in terms of what happens with BJA, any feedback we get. If there is a need to meet again, we can do that. And then when the application itself, the solicitation is released, you all will get notification of that too. So thank you so much. I appreciate you all and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Right. Nice job, Rachel.
Thanks all.
Bye, you guys.
Where there's a
Thank you.
will, there's a way.